Hello, fellow explorers of life. Welcome back. Let me ask you a question that might haunt you on a Sunday night. If you had to choose between a life of pure, uninterrupted pleasure, like an eternal oyster, satisfied but brainless, or a life of pure, cold intellect, with zero emotion and zero fun, which would you choose? It's a terrifying choice, isn't it? If you choose the pleasure, you lose your humanity. You become livestock. If you choose the intellect, you lose your joy. You become a computer. We struggle with this balance every single day. We binge-watch Netflix seeking pleasure, then we feel guilty and force ourselves to work seeking wisdom. We oscillate between hedonism and burnout. We are desperate for a formula that tells us how to combine feeling good with being good. The good news is, you don't have to figure this out alone. Plato wrote an entire book about this exact crisis. It is called Philebus. It is one of his latest, most mature, and frankly most underrated dialogues. In this book, Socrates takes on the role of a cosmic bartender, trying to mix the perfect cocktail of life. Today, we are going to dive into this debate to discover why most of our pleasures are actually false, why limitless freedom is a trap, and how we can mix the perfect recipe for a life that is both happy and meaningful. To understand the core message of Philebus, we need to look at the setup. The dialogue is a battle between two characters, Philebus, who represents pure hedonism, pleasure is the only god, and Socrates, who argues for wisdom and memory. But there is a twist. Philebus is barely in the book. He is too busy enjoying himself to argue, so a man named Protarchus takes his place. The core message that emerges from their debate is that neither pleasure nor wisdom is the highest good on its own. Socrates argues that a life of pure pleasure without memory or knowledge is meaningless. If you feel joy but have no memory of it 5 seconds later and no consciousness to realize you are happy, are you really happy? No, you are a jellyfish. Conversely, a life of pure intellect without any feeling is not a human life. It is a sterile existence. The core philosophy here is the mixed life. Socrates concludes that the good life is a mixture. But it's not just throwing everything into a pot. It is a precise architectural construction. The secret is not what is in the mix, but the proportion and measure used to bind them. The enemy of the good life is not pleasure itself. It is the unlimited, the chaotic, boundless desire for more. The good life is found when we impose a limit structure on the unlimited pleasure. Now, let us break down the 3 most crucial insights from this dialogue that will change how you view your own happiness. The first insight is the concept of the unlimited epiron versus the limit parous. Socrates asks us to look at the universe. There are things that are unlimited, like heat and cold, or fast and slow. If left alone, they have no boundaries. They just get hotter or colder. Then there is the limit, like a specific number or ratio. When you apply the limit to the unlimited, you get something beautiful. Think of sound. Sound is unlimited noise. But when you apply the mathematical limit of pitch and rhythm, you get music. Think of the weather. When you balance hot and cold, you get a season. Here is the insight. Pleasure is part of the unlimited. By its nature, pleasure always wants more. It has no internal stop button. If you let pleasure run your life, it becomes noise, not music. It becomes a fever, not health. Socrates teaches us that we cannot rely on pleasure to regulate itself. We must apply the limit of wisdom and intelligence to impose a structure on our desires. A good life is not about suppressing pleasure. It's about giving it a rhythm, turning the noise of your desires into a symphony. The second insight is the terrifying idea of false pleasures. We tend to think, if I feel it, it must be real. Socrates disagrees. He argues that pleasures can be just as false as opinions. How 2 ways. First, anticipatory pleasure. We often feel pleasure imagining a future that will never happen. We daydream about winning the lottery and feel good. But since the reality is false, the pleasure is grounded in a lie. It is a hallucination. Second, and more importantly, mixed pleasures relief from pain. Socrates points out that what we call pleasure is often just the relief of pain. Think about scratching an intense itch. It feels amazing. But is it pure joy? No, it is the relief of suffering. The pleasure of eating is mostly the removal of the pain of hunger. These are mixed pleasures. They are dirty. They depend on pain to exist. The deeper the pain, the more intense the relief pleasure. This explains addiction. An addict doesn't feel joy. they feel the relief of withdrawal. The insight is that we spend our lives chasing relief, thinking it is happiness. We are constantly scratching itches: loneliness, boredom, insecurity, and mistaking that temporary relief for the good life. The third insight is the hierarchy of the mix. At the end of the dialogue, Socrates ranks the ingredients of the good life. We expect him to put wisdom at the top, but he doesn't. The ranking is shocking: measure and the mean, the right timing and proportion, symmetry and beauty, the elegance of the structure, intellect and wisdom, the mind that understands, sciences and arts, practical skills, pure pleasures. These are at the very bottom. What are pure pleasures? Socrates says these are pleasures that don't depend on pain. Looking at a simple geometric shape, seeing a vibrant color, smelling a flower, learning a new concept. These don't have a hangover. They are safe to include. The profound insight here is that structure measure is more important than intelligence. You can be the smartest person in the world, intellect, but if your life lacks timing, proportion, and balance measure, you will be miserable. The container matters more than the content. Without the right measure, the mixture explodes. So, how do we apply this to our chaotic modern lives? First, conduct a dopamine audit to identify false pleasures. Look at the things that make you feel good. Are they pure, or are they mixed? When you doom scroll on social media, are you learning pure, or are you just alleviating the pain of boredom and anxiety mixed relief? When you drink alcohol, is it for the taste pure, or to numb stress relief? Identify the itch-scratching behaviors. Realize that these will never satisfy you because they are fed by the unlimited. You can never scratch an itch enough to make it stay away forever. Second, become the bartender of your soul. Stop trying to be a monk, zero pleasure, or a hedonist, all pleasure. Your job is to mix. But remember the rule of the limit. You need to set the boundaries before you start pouring. Decide your limits on entertainment, food, and rest, not in the moment of desire, but in the moment of wisdom. Don't ask, "Do I want this?" Ask, "Does this fit the proportion of the life I am building?" If you add too much intense pleasure, it overpowers the delicate flavor of wisdom. Third, prioritize measure over intensity. We live in a culture that worships intensity. We want the most intense love, the most intense party, the most intense success. Socrates warns us that intensity is often a sign of the unlimited and implies a lack of balance. Seek the mean, the appropriate. A sustainable career is better than a burnout-inducing success. A steady relationship is better than a dramatic romance. Beauty and goodness are found in symmetry and calm, not in the screaming highs of intensity. The dialogue ends with a humble realization. The good isn't a single thing like a gold coin you find. It is a process. It is the daily act of mixing. Socrates teaches us that we are the architects of our own existence. We have the raw materials, the honey of pleasure, and the water of wisdom. If we pour recklessly, we get a sticky, sickly mess. But if we pour with measure, with an eye for beauty and proportion, we can create a life that is not only enjoyable, but truly divine. Don't just chase the feeling, build the structure. That is the secret of Philebus. Thank you for thinking with me today.